Long before the Bible was finalized, before kings ruled Jerusalem, before priests declared what was true worship, there may have been another name spoken beside the God of Israel, a forgotten goddess, a hidden queen erased from history. And buried beneath the deserts of the ancient world, archaeologists may have uncovered the evidence. Because scratched onto the side of an ancient storage jar discovered in the Sinai desert are words so controversial that they continue to shock biblical scholars today. I bless you by Yahweh and by His Asherah. His Asherah. Not a symbol, not a metaphor, but possibly a goddess. A divine companion standing beside the God of Israel himself. For centuries, this possibility was dismissed as impossible. But the deeper archaeologists dug into the ruins of the ancient Near East, the stranger the story became. Because the Bible itself repeatedly warns against the worship of Asherah. It condemns sacred poles raised in her honor. It speaks of priests and queens devoted to her. It even claims that her image once stood inside the temple in Jerusalem. Why would the biblical writers obsess over destroying her unless millions once worshipped her? Tonight, we uncover one of the greatest mysteries in biblical archaeology. Who was Asherah? Was she truly the wife of Yahweh? And why was her memory almost erased from history itself? Subscribe to Sacred Depth for more deep biblical mysteries, ancient secrets, and forgotten history. Like, comment, and share if you enjoy this journey into the unknown. The story begins far before ancient Israel existed. Far to the north, on the Mediterranean coast of what is now Syria, stood a powerful Bronze Age city called Ugarit. For centuries, the city thrived as a center of trade, wealth, and religion. Then, suddenly, it vanished. Around 1200 BC, during the catastrophic collapse of the Bronze Age world, Ugarit fell into silence. Its palaces burned, its people disappeared. Its temples crumbled beneath the sands. And there, hidden for over 3,000 years, ancient clay tablets waited in darkness. When archaeologists finally uncovered them in the 20th century, they revealed an entire forgotten mythology, a world of gods, divine wars, sacred kingship, and heavenly councils. And among these texts appeared a powerful goddess named Athirat, in another language, Asherah. She was not a minor figure. She was the queen of heaven, the wife of the high god El, the mother of the gods, the creator of divine kings. Ancient texts called her the creatress of the gods. Again and again, she appears as the one who gives legitimacy to rulers. Even the mighty storm god Baal could not establish his throne without her approval. In one ancient story, Baal seeks permission to build his royal palace after defeating the sea god Yam. But the high god El refuses him. Neither threats nor power can change his mind. Only Asherah can persuade him. So gifts of gold and silver are brought before her, and when she finally speaks, heaven itself listens. She approaches El. She argues for Baal's kingship, and at last El agrees. A palace shall be built. Baal becomes king. In these ancient myths, Asherah is not weak. She is not secondary. She is the power behind the throne, a divine mother, a heavenly queen, a force tied to fertility, kingship, protection, and cosmic order itself. But here is where the mystery deepens, because centuries later, traces of this same goddess begin appearing among the ancient Israelites. The Hebrew Bible constantly attacks her worship. Again and again, the biblical writers describe sacred poles called Asherahs, wooden objects planted beside altars, objects linked to worship on hills, beneath trees, and inside shrines. Kings are judged based on whether they destroyed them or allowed them to remain. That detail alone is deeply revealing, because people do not repeatedly ban something unless it is widespread. The Bible describes entire generations worshiping in ways later writers condemned. One king allows Asherah worship to flourish, another tears down her shrines, then another rebuilds them again. At one point, according to the Book of Kings, an image of Asherah was placed inside the Temple of Jerusalem itself, inside the holiest site in ancient Israel. Think about that. If this account preserves historical memory, then worship connected to Asherah may once have existed at the very center of Israelite religion. And the evidence outside the Bible becomes even more disturbing. In the 1970s, archaeologists excavating a remote desert site in the Sinai Peninsula uncovered strange inscriptions painted onto storage jars and walls. The place was called Kuntillet Ajrud. At first, the inscriptions seemed ordinary: blessings, prayers, travelers leaving messages behind. But then scholars translated the Hebrew words, and suddenly everything changed. "I bless you by Yahweh of Samaria and by His Asherah." Another inscription read, "By Yahweh of Taman and His Asherah." The phrases stunned researchers because this was not written by enemies of Israel. This was written by Israelites themselves, people invoking Yahweh alongside Asherah. Some scholars argued the word referred only to a sacred object, perhaps a wooden pole or ritual symbol. But others believed the meaning was far more explosive, that Asherah was being invoked as a divine being, a goddess connected directly to Yahweh. And beside one of these inscriptions stood a mysterious image, two strange figures side by side, one male, one female. Some scholars believe they represent Egyptian protective spirits. Others believe the figures are unrelated graffiti. But another interpretation remains deeply controversial, that the figures depict Yahweh and Asherah, a divine pair, a heavenly king beside his queen. And the details become even stranger. The male figure appears calf-like. This matters because the Bible repeatedly accuses Israelites of worshiping Yahweh in the form of a calf. The golden calf in Exodus, the calves established by King Jeroboam, the prophet Hosea condemning the calf of Samaria. The connections are unsettling. Could ancient Israelites have imagined Yahweh very differently than later biblical writers admitted? And if so, what exactly did they believe? The deeper archaeologists looked, the more evidence emerged. Across ancient Judah, thousands of small female figurines have been discovered buried beneath floors, hidden in homes, and placed inside domestic spaces. These figures are known as Judean pillar figurines. Most date to the exact same period as the inscriptions mentioning Asherah. The figurines usually show a woman with exaggerated breasts, hands supporting her chest, and a pillar-shaped body. No legs, no detailed movement, just a mysterious female form. Scholars fiercely debate their meaning. Some believe they represent Asherah herself. Others think they were protective household figures connected to childbirth and fertility. But regardless of interpretation, one fact remains undeniable. Ancient Judah was filled with female religious imagery, not in secret underground cults, not hidden from society, but openly present in homes across the kingdom. This changes how we understand ancient Israelite religion, because modern people often imagine biblical religion as strictly monotheistic from the beginning, but archaeology paints a more complicated picture. A world where local shrines existed everywhere, where sacred trees and standing stones marked divine presence, where households used ritual figurines and offerings, and where Yahweh may have been worshipped alongside other divine beings for centuries. Even the Hebrew Bible preserves echoes of this older world. In Psalm 82, God stands in the midst of a divine council surrounded by other gods. That image mirrors ancient Canaanite mythology almost perfectly. The high God presiding over heavenly beings, and many scholars now believe Yahweh gradually absorbed the roles once held by older Canaanite gods like El and Baal. If Yahweh inherited the position of the high God, did he also inherit Asherah? That possibility terrifies some believers, but for historians and archaeologists, the evidence cannot simply be ignored. And then came the Great Purge. In the late 600s BC, King Josiah launched one of the most radical religious reforms in ancient Israelite history. According to the Bible, sacred poles were burned, altars destroyed, shrines demolished, images smashed into dust. The Asherah worship was targeted relentlessly. The temple itself was purified. Priests connected to older traditions were removed. Everything became centered around exclusive worship of Yahweh alone. Many scholars believe this was the turning point, the moment when older forms of Israelite religion were systematically erased. Not instantly, but gradually. Texts were edited, traditions rewritten, old beliefs condemned as corruption. The winners of history became the authors of Scripture, and Asherah became transformed into a symbol of apostasy. But traces of her survived, hidden in broken inscriptions, buried in ruined cities, waiting beneath the earth for thousands of years. And perhaps the strangest part of all, even translators later helped erase her memory. When ancient Hebrew scriptures were translated into Greek, the name Asherah was often changed into vague words like grove. Later Latin translators copied this, then English Bibles followed. Readers no longer saw the name of a goddess, only mysterious references to trees and groves. The memory faded. The queen disappeared from history. Until archaeology began uncovering her again. One inscription, one figurine, one shattered shrine at a time. So, was Asherah truly the wife of Yahweh? The honest answer is that scholars still debate it fiercely. Some say yes, others argue the evidence is too ambiguous. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. For many ancient Israelites, religion looked very different than later generations imagined. The world of the Bible was not born in perfect unity. It emerged slowly through conflict, reform, politics, and cultural transformation. And somewhere in that forgotten past stood a goddess whose memory refused to die. A queen hidden beneath the foundations of biblical history itself, perhaps erased, but never completely gone. Subscribe to Sacred Depth for more ancient mysteries, hidden archaeology, and forgotten biblical secrets. Like, comment, and share. And remember, history is often written by those who survived, but the earth remembers everything.